Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3. I have Coach Pat Sheahan here. They say that a good coach can change a game, and a great coach can change a life, and that's exactly what he is to me and many others. Coach, welcome to episode 3. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dan. Great to see your charming face, and it's great to be here with you for this amount of time we have.
Well, I say I have a face for radio, so I don't know why I'm doing this, but I just want to give the listeners a profile of who you are. And I know this isn't just your identity, but I'm just going to go through kind of the list of things that you have accomplished and where you've been. Starting off with Concordia Stingers, two-time captain as a player in the late 70s, and then moving forward to an assistant coach with McGill in the early 80s or mid 80s, I should say. And then a 10-year tenure with Concordia Stingers as a head coach. And then from 2000 to 2018, almost two decades coaching Queens Gales. I mean, my math isn't always great, but I think I counted 90 wins to 62 regular season losses. And then most recently, during the COVID years here, assistant coach with Calgary, a short stint in Guelph, and then back with Calgary, following your son's footsteps. And in that, a three-time Vanier Cup champ, 87, 2009, and 2019, CIS U Sport Coach of the Year in 2008, five-time Conference Coach of the Year, and then capped off just last year, uh, inducted into the Hall of Fame with Queen's University. That is an incredible list. Um, talking about 3 Vanier Cups, some coaches go through their whole career not even getting one. How do you, what are your thoughts on accomplishments in those years?
I was very fortunate, as you know, achievements like that are not done in isolation. You always have to have great players, and the years that I was an assistant, I was surrounded by some other great coaches. The years that I was the head coach, I was able to acquire some very good coaches, recruit some outstanding players. It's been a great journey, Dan. It really has, and I'm fortunate that to have gone to the national championship with 5 different organizations. So you come to recognize winning when you see it, and in each of the places where we got to the final, there were some similar patterns that had to be created and then achieved by the coaches and the players. So it's been a great run. It's been a good life. If you don't
Okay.
weaken.
So, I look back at the 3 Vanier Cup champions, like championships, sorry. I know that's one measure of success, but do you have your own definition or idea of success and just through life? It doesn't have to be just football, but just from your own perspective.
Well, Dan, to be fair, I'm a teacher by trade. If you ask me what my profession is, I'm a teacher. The football field was my classroom. I invited individuals like yourself in. It was an opportunity to provide instruction, help guide you through a very, very important time in your development, and see how far we could go together. Obviously, individuals like yourself, I'm extremely proud of. You came from humble beginnings, I would say, to becoming a key performer on a national championship team and a key performer in the national championship game. I mean, the memories that you are left with will last with you for the rest of your life. And that's sort of a byproduct of the developmental process. It's always nice to have a few wins along the way, etc. But, to see individuals like yourself graduate, go on and, you've entered professional life. You've also chosen to, uh, you know, uh, you're in a profession where you're what we call the giving profession. You're giving back yourself. So I'm delighted to have been part of that. And I continue to bear witness and claim some of your success. How's that?
Totally. And then, one of the first things that I'll never forget is you telling us and, hundreds of others in, training camp that we arrive as boys. And by the time we finish our time there with you, we leave as men, and that's it rings true totally. Some of the lessons that are learned in a lot in those 4 or 5 years that you're part of that squad and the coaching staff, like you said, like, those are things that you'll never forget. Going back to success, have you accomplished all the things that you have wanted to, or is there more on your to-do list?
Well, it's interesting. To be quite honest with you, I have accomplished everything I set out to do. To be honest, the championships that have been won. Once you get to the top of the mountain, you've been there. The only thing that remains is, well, can you do it again, or can you do it better? But to have been there, you become part of a very unique club. Listen, I got to the national championship twice and didn't win the big game too. So I'm afraid.
I didn't
I'm
bring that up on purpose.
Well, you know, I don't know if you recall, but they used to have this great Wide Wide World of Sports ad there where they show the victories, and then of course the agony of defeat, and they show a skier or a ski jumper falling off the side, etc. So one of the things that happens when you go all the way to the final and don't win it is what gets lost is what a great season that was. It was a tremendous year, and maybe for the want of maybe 3 or 4 plays here or there, and a whole season just gets buried in anonymity. But they were great seasons. They were great triumphs during that season. Many of the same accomplishments from the winning seasons were there. So you wrap it all up into a career. You can't win it every year. That's not the way it's designed. You're playing against, coaching against other great colleagues, other great teams, and they prepare and they play also. So it's the process of developing young men was one that I had the pleasure to be a part of, and that continues today. And I'll stick around as long as I'm still making an impact. As soon as I find myself redundant, or I cannot get the air or can't motivate young men, it's time to step aside and let somebody else do it.
Well, and, kind of a good segue there, through your, decades and decades of coaching, did you face any barriers? I know, you're kinda maybe foreshadowing one, but, over the last several years, have you encountered anything that was a huge struggle?
Well, listen, coaching it can be described as a very nasty business. It's competitive, and I had the unique experience of being, in some people's minds anyway, not their first choice, So,
Mm,
I went into several situations very early in the campaigns. There were people who asking, well, why did they hire him? Like, why do we have him, etc. So, you always had that a little bit. People were reticent to give you their full support. You had to, but that's okay because I honestly believe in life. I mean, you're not owed anything. You have to go out and earn it. So you go out there and earn people's confidence. You go out there and prove yourself. You give them a reason to believe in you. And I just sort of stuck to it. You have to have a tremendous measure of stick-to-itiveness in this business, right? Because there's going to be lots of people hoping you fail. Just the competitive environment brings with it enough barriers that make winning difficult. So it's solving problems, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 year at a time. When I was asked at Queens, for example, after your win in 2009, boy, you guys did a great job this year, and I was quick to tell them that no, that championship took 10 years to build.
mhm, mhm.
And that was individuals building on the experiences of others, and finally getting a nucleus of talent that was good enough and rose to the moment like you
Mhm.
did.
So from a team perspective, that took a decade, but, for yourself, like, who helped you get to, where you, like, your origin story with Concordia? Was there certain people that helped you along the way, or did you just kinda go solo and figure it out yourself?
No, this is a business where you have many mentors, etc. So I'd like to. It's a great segue there because again, my first coach was my dad playing minor baseball in Brockville. I grew up in what many people would consider an idyllic small town in eastern Ontario. Sports was really important. Minor baseball, minor hockey, the high schools Sports in high school was important, and I got an opportunity to experience that. As I said, my dad was my first coach. I had a number of other community coaches who I really respected, learned from, and I really respected my high school coach. He was a great man. I really looked up to him, and he's the one that probably made me consider a career in teaching and coaching. Just observing him, the way he carried himself, the way he treated others. He was an easy guy to want to emulate. So then, of course, you had to take it on into the next ranks. When I got involved in coaching after playing, I really had some good fortune. I would like to mention that I actually started my career in the Canadian Junior Football League with the Montreal Concords. And my coaching colleagues that year, one of them was Wally Wano, somebody who's
Wow.
reasonably well known in your area out there. I
Yes, sir.
became great friends with him. I studied him. I listened to everything he said. My observations of him, or it was a tremendous learning experience to me. And then the following year in junior football, there was a man by the name of Tony Proudfoot, who was another sort of Montreal professional football legend. Two brilliant guys, very different, but they both had a tremendous impact on me. The gentleman who ran the junior football team, a man by the name of Searle White, who I I just marveled at. Like, he did all this work, getting sponsors, details. He wasn't even coaching. He
Hmm.
did all of this so that we could coach and the players could play. So I had a great deal of respect from him. One of the things he learned, he said, if you treat young men in a first class way, they'll play for you.
Hmm.
And I've never forgotten that. Never forgotten that. Then, of course, I got my first job with Charlie Bailey at McGill. Charlie was already a legend when he hired me, etc. So I had 5 great years at McGill, which culminated in year 4 in a national championship. And Charlie's byline that has stuck with me is that when I asked him his philosophy of football, he said, "Well, I like to win, but I like to look good doing it." And
Hmm.
and in his lexicon, that meant disciplined, orderly, a team that looked polished. They were well prepared, etc. They played with character and grit. So these were things that really influenced me, and as I went along the way, you might then okay, you're going to make a few mistakes. It's a self-correcting, it's an auto-correcting career. You make a mistake. How did that happen? Why did that happen? Yeah, in this business, you better not make too many of them. You better be a good corrector.
Hmm.
And then the accumulation of experiences just paid off in ways like 1998 at Concordia, and 2009 at Queens, and 2019 at the University of Calgary. So it was a collection of experiences built one on top of the other that brought us to where we were.
So you kind of mentioned it earlier, players kind of gravitating towards certain coaches. In the Canadian game, there's not a whole lot of money that schools can hand out. So how does a head coach or an organization separate themselves from others in the whole recruiting pitch?
Well, football is a relationship business, right? So, one of the things that I was the sort of frontline recruiter for, all the programs that I was involved in, save for Calgary. I wasn't the only recruiter at Calgary, but the others, I was a frontline recruiter. You know what? To get to know individuals like yourself, your families, find out what you wanted to accomplish in life. How could I help you get there? How could Queens or any of the other universities help you get there? So I personalized the recruiting, okay, because I felt at the end of the day, and then a young man like yourself is going to say, "Can I play for him? Do you think I'd want to play for him, etc." Because I think when you weigh all of the recruiting pitches, they're all fairly similar. I mean, it's up to individuals like yourself and your mom and dad to determine whether it's sincere and whether whether they believed, they know that sending their boy across the country the way yours did, was he going to be well looked after? I think that, these personal relationships and the credibility that comes with experience, that gives you a little bit of leverage in recruiting that enables you to build. Now it's more about the financial enticement
Mhm.
now, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, well, I wouldn't say that the personal relationship is completely gone, but I would say that the financial package is certainly, much more serious in the decision making.
Fair point. Just kind of lead into the theme of the third question here, about it taking a village. How are you paying it forward to others? I mean, you have decades of experience, and you talked about mentorship earlier. Have people reached out to you for some sage advice, or what are you currently doing, or recently have done to help these other up and coming coaches?
Well, first of all, I gotta start right here under my own roof. I've got, 3 children who became teachers. Okay, one of them is a youth sport head football coach. It's certainly well, I put no pressure on him to sort of stay in the family business. He was free to go wherever he wanted, but there was something that clicked for him, okay, and the dynamic of coaching that he really enjoys, and he's following his dream there at the University of Calgary. My other
Hmm.
two are both big community contributors here in their school communities. They're both teachers. They're respected coaches, and we have talked about coaching over the years. Probably had some great discussions right at the dinner table, one you've been
Yeah.
at, actually.
Yes,
So
sir.
I've never turned down an opportunity to speak at a clinic because I feel that giving back is an important part of this. It's the bizarre profession that, you know, uh, sort of cutthroat competitive, and yet when you get an opportunity to go and speak in front of a bunch of young coaches, you go there with designs on helping them get better, and to help them get better you have to share some of your experience and information. I attended many clinics when I was coming up the ranks, and I feel that it's important that you give back when you get the opportunity. In addition to that, I've encouraged any young coach who strikes a chord with how I look at things. Anytime they reach out, I'm happy to speak with them, meet with them. And help them along and give them some very, very direct, sometimes, advice about where they need to go, etc. So I think giving back is built into this career, and helping others plan it forward, pay it for. I pay it forward so that they can, have a career, etc. So I enjoy doing that. It's sort of the completion of a career when you give back and make sure that your experience just doesn't, sit on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what should up and coming coaches, young or old, whether they're, high school CGFL or U Sport or NCAA, what are some of the things that they need to do in order to prep themselves or equip them for the next level?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is an attitude, okay? Attitude number one, or sort of like is that you don't know enough. Don't ever get into your head that you're too good, or etc. Uh, and don't waste a lot of time trying to demonstrate to people how much you know, etc. For me, and I hire a young coach, or when I was in the position to hire young coaches, I wanted to know how badly they wanted to learn, because the game is dynamic, it's changing. The problem solving that we did 10 years ago is, there's some relevance to it, but it's borderline irrelevant for helping you solve the problems of today. So, you have to be a scrounger of information. You've got to be able to reach out, to other coaches, go to clinics, read books. Now with the number of coaching videos that are online, etc. I mean, you could almost be doing this 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. You could be, getting better at any aspect of it. So there's a lot of data that needs to be interpreted. So get out there and learn as much as you can, and then get out there and coach as much as you can. And at every level, you're going to learn something. So if you wanted to be part of the varsity and there's nothing, well, then there's nothing for you at the varsity. Well, then take something at the junior varsity. And then, your goal should be to by the time you leave, everybody should look back and say that your efforts created a situation where things are a lot better uh, when you left than they were when you got there. So you don't have to sort of pump up your own resume. There's always somebody watching. So, coaches in this business are always looking for winners. So, do your best to present yourself as a winner, somebody who's, constantly looking for the answers, doggedly determined, willing to put the hours in. Those are the young coaches that are going to go far in this business.
Now, on the flip side, up and coming players, what are some of the things like in today's game? I know we played, 20 years ago, but maybe it hasn't changed. But what are some of the things that they should be focusing on, high school kids, to get picked up by a U Sport squad?
Yeah, well, I think that, that challenge can be very simply stated like this. You're constantly working to create the best version of yourself. Okay. Look at yourself when you came in. You probably felt that you were a pretty good athlete. Then you found out that you needed development. Well,
Yes, sir.
you were not unlike a lot of others. You needed development. There were things you needed to do, you needed to learn, etc. And so be open to the learning, be open to the coaching. Okay. Like, if your coach is not your buddy. Okay. Now he is somebody that, you hope that you have a great relationship with him, but if it's all buddy buddy make you feel good stuff, your development will only go so far. So there are some people who have a reputation for coaching hard. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, just remember that if a coach takes the time and the effort to coach you hard, it's because he thinks you're good.
Hmm.
So, you need to have that attitude that you can be coached, you wanna be coached, etcetera. The other thing you need to prove is you need to prove that you're a competitor. That winning matters, right? Or being the best you can be matters, right? I think that if you invest yourself into being the best you can be, I think that the wins and losses will take care of themselves. How many people in life can actually admit that, well, I'm the best I can be? Well, chances are there's relatively few. You can always get better. So as long as you're dedicated to making yourself the best you can be, creating that best version of yourself, in my mind, that is 99 times out of 100 is going to be more than good enough to accomplish what you set out to do.
I love that. The women's NCAAs are happening right now. I don't know if you saw the highlight, but if you had the sound off, a coach was almost looked like he was lambasting their player, but they did a lip read, and they said, "I believe in you," pointing the finger at her and said, "I believe in you. I need you ready for that big moment." And then she sat down, but then she enters the game again, and scores the next bucket. I mean, call me old school, but I love that type of coaching. Like you said earlier, being direct. Are you know, I don't know how to say this, but are kids, some people call them soft compared to 20, 30 years ago. Are coaches just as hard? Are kids coachable, or what's your view on the current state of high school kids coming into U Sport?
Yeah, I think that it's not kids, it's not coaches. What it is, it's a bigger C than that. It's culture. Okay.
Mm,
In Canada today, I mean, we got a little bit of a wake up call here this past year about because we were sort of just drifting along, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, there's been some major socio-cultural, political things happening that, okay, life maybe not to be as easy in Canada. Maybe we've had it too easy, et cetera. So, I believe that in my day, I think we probably had to work a little harder, et cetera. I think we're probably a little bit we've become victims of our own success a little bit, right? And as a result, there's been some adjustments that need to be made. But the great thing about football, as you know, is that the requirements for success have not changed. You need to be physical, you need to be tough, you need to be precise, you need to be prepared. Okay, you need to be driven. You'll know yourself that in the championship game, I'm not sure that everybody would have passed with a 100% medical certificate there. There's guys who, they work hard for their moment. They're not going to miss it. There's extra rolls of tape that are put on places to
Yeah.
keep things in order, etc. So there is a mental toughness from football that is required, but it also continues to get developed in the game. So I'm
Mhm.
not too worried about the fact that kids what they don't have. It's up to us to coach them, and it's us up to us to teach them. So and as long as they're still teachable, they're still coachable, then they'll play for you. Now, athletes today, there was a day where the old adage was, hey, I want you to run through that wall, put a hole in it. And the kid would say, well, okay, how big?
Mhm.
Kids are different today, and so is society. The first thing is, well, why would I want to do that, right? To put a hole through
Mhm.
a wall, that doesn't make a lot of sense, etc. But as soon as the young man or young woman, okay, figures out, okay, why you're asking him or challenging him. Once they figure that out, okay, then it becomes their competitive instincts will take over. So, and
Mm.
we're also dealing with a very, very informed, group now. There's people watching. There's people watching so many videos and watching, games and clips and plays and just the access to information, okay, has become a challenge just to organize and
Mhm.
help keep the young people grounded. But as far as I'm concerned, that's still in the domain of what a coach is. It's a coach's role to make sense of all that with the athlete. And the other thing too, and this is a John Wooden, you've heard me, use a few John Woodenisms over the years, but this is one of the ones that sticks in my head now is that a young man, okay, in our case in football, okay, will never care how much you know until he knows how much you care.
Mm. Mhm.
So if he knows you care about him, you want the best for him, then he trusts. If you're raising your voice at him, you're not mad at him. You're trying to motivate him. You're trying to get the most out of him. And that's really what a coach's job is, right? Is to get the most out of you. And
Mm.
sometimes that's a little hard, but
Yeah.
that's really what it is.
Tough love for sure. Okay, switching gears here. Kind of the state of football in general, high school, college, professional. Has things changed over the last couple decades, or are we trending upwards? Is it more of a popular sport? What are your perspectives?
Yeah, I think once again a cultural thing. Okay, listen. In my growing up, okay, football was part of Canadian culture. Okay, I happened to be a young person. Okay, we had Russ Jackson. We had a Canadian icon. Okay, playing quarterback in Ottawa. He was the epitome of boy. All you had to do is work hard. You could make it, right? I think that what's happened is that we've lost a little luster, and I think that hopefully that we will be able to get that back. I don't think that it's a um, I'm really alarmed at the number of schools, certainly in Ontario, who've dropped football programs. Okay, it seems like, football it's too big, it's too expensive, too many problems, people get hurt, etc. But nobody's focusing on what you lose when you lose the football team. Okay,
Mhm.
you lose the camaraderie, you lose that out of classroom learning. The kind of training that I believe that young men need today. They need to get knocked down and to learn to get back up. And a lot of people find that kind of learning a little bit harsh. But for the ones that are vigilant and they're sticking to football, their kids are profiting from it, and the athletes continue to be great. I mean, listen, yeah, the athletes are better than they were, and they continue to get better. So they're bigger, they're stronger, they know more about how to prepare themselves, etc. And they just need to be coached. So you just got to find the ones that want to be coached. So am I alarmed about that? Well, you know. if we're ever drawn into a military incursion ever in the future, etc., people are going to find out that it'll be a very, very unforgiving experience. So, we better have developed some young men and women who are tough in the mind and can meet the challenge, etc. The other thing too is that and now this is my view. I think you have to say this, but there's something in young men that they want to belong to something. Okay, and there's this magnetism that pulls them together. They want to be together, etc. So, you know, would you rather have them play football? Or would you rather have them forming associations outside of the school walls? Okay, perhaps participating in activities that are less ingenuous. You know what I'm
Mhm,
saying? So,
mhm, mhm.
at least if they're out there wearing their school's colors and all the rest of it, and taking pride in their school, and the fact that they would die for the teammates they're playing with, I think those are good values. Those are good things to be promoting as part of Canadian life, and that's why I think we need football and other sports too. But football, fulfills a great need in our schools today.
That's all, yeah, it's a great point. I think, just a side note there, in my time as an educator coming out of Queens, since 2011, it might sound cliche, but I think sport has saved a lot of kids, at-risk youth. In my time, as you mentioned, what are they doing from 3 o'clock onwards? Are they hanging out with some questionable people? Are they at the practice field? And it doesn't have to be football, but I think just sport in general. Kids being a part of a team, learning those hard lessons, learning what it takes to be a collective unit in a positive light. I think it's great for kids. And the hope is that some of them move on to post secondary, right? But
Well, it
um,
starts at the top, right? I mean, if it's important to play for your school, then people are going to do it, right?
yeah.
But if it's not important, if it becomes not important as part of the culture, then they won't, right? There's got to be like today's athlete, today's students, today's this generation of young people. They're asking why? Why should I do this? Well, it's important. People think it's important. People want to come out and watch. Okay,
Mhm, mhm,
stop having the games at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when nobody can go watch them. Okay, you go across. We just have to drive across the river here. Every small town on a Friday night, there's a couple of thousand people have gathered to watch their high schools play, and I'm
mhm.
talking about small places.
Yeah.
So the importance that you put on it, all right, is it becomes a motivating feature. And if the kids cannot incur all of the assets, okay, that I'm talking about here, if they're not playing.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's, yeah, great point. I'm hopeful too. The state of football in BC, I think it's been kinda status quo. There's been some programs that have folded, but I think for the most part, it's still a pretty popular sport. And like you said earlier, I think the athlete in general, um, has become, much better compared to 20 years ago. Kids are faster, stronger, taller, they can lift more. I mean, I'm speaking from the general sense, but, yeah, and you look down south, some of these kids are just behemoths, right? Like, they are massive and they're fast. So I'm hoping that, we can continue, in a positive light. Uh
Particularly in the public schools, because you don't have to convince people in the private schools about the value of football because the private schools all have it. You would think that that they would be the first ones to drop, but they don't. They know that it's an important part of the young men's development, and I just think the challenges in public schools is you've got fundraising. You just need to have strong leadership and everywhere, and that's why when a 30-year football coach when he retires, okay, and they don't replace him with another football type guy, that's a statement that the administration's making that,
mhm.
well, we don't necessarily feel that that's as important as you might think. So now, listen, people can look at me as a dinosaur, as an anachronism, etc. But what I hope this generation doesn't lose is the experience of playing. I cannot imagine going to high school, not playing football. And I just, the fact that some kids are going through high school and they don't even have a team. I mean, I would transfer schools to find somebody who does.
Well, I think you're well, at least out here, you're seeing some of these kids who are football players, they play for their community, and then they're like, "Well, my catchment school doesn't have a team, so I'm gonna be going to the next closest spot." It's definitely a thing, out here, and BC school sports, the governing body has to deal with that, however they handle it, but
Well, thank
it's
God for community football because I think they've helped save the sport, etc. But I will say this is that there is nothing like playing for your high school.
totally.
Wearing that jersey on game day down the hallway, you cannot replace that feeling of confidence that you're instilling that, hey, I'm doing an important thing here today, and everybody knows it.
Mhm.
And, so that's, anyway, we beat that one to death. I
Yeah,
think you
no, I
know where
love
I'm
it.
coming I think you know where I'm coming from on that one.
Okay, are you ready for some, rapid fire questions?
Okay?
I mean, I call it rapid fire, but you can answer as long as you like. I think these are pretty favorable questions. I'm not gonna put you on the spot. Maybe one question.
Low-hanging fruit, huh? Okay.
Yes, sir. The first one is, pinnacle of your career. Can you pinpoint one moment, or perhaps a year?
Well, any of those, your year, 2009 was great. I mean, one of your teammates was my youngest one of your roommates was my youngest son. And then, of course, his older brother was our quarterback coach, and
Mhm,
they had their big moments in that season.
mhm,
I think probably the thing that elevates that one more is that because our family was involved, and because my family was involved, you guys were involved with my family, and that made it special, right? So, anytime I went to a national championship, it was a special group of guys that got there, and I
mhm,
got there 5 times, and they were all special groups. But if there's one that's a little bit more special, the '09 is because my sons were there with you guys as part of the entourage, and they got a chance to experience that too.
mhm, mhm, and the halftime speech is often talked about, in the final game, where you say that we had to score first because I think it was the biggest deficit in Vanier Cup history. So you and Ryan must have had a conversation, and I think, Devin was the one, who scored the following touchdown in the 3rd quarter there. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are, but and that was important. But there are also 2 very big field goals made in the 3rd quarter. If you recall, our
Mhm,
plan was to come back at them in the third. We knew they would want the win in the fourth. Um, Devin did his part, no question. You did yours. Danny Brannigan did his. There were the defense. I mean, we blocked a field goal. Matt Vickers had an interception in the end zone. Unfortunately, up until that point, and I believe I made that very clear at halftime, you guys had not had your best half, right? We were not quite living up to the expectation or the standard that we had set throughout the season. And, you can say that there's a number of reasons. Biggest game of the year. We kicked off an hour early. All these things have, they all have, impact on performance, etc. But thankfully, and, I'm sure you all feel the same. When it really mattered, in the last 30 minutes of the national championship game, a number of you had perhaps your most shining moment, in your careers.
mhm,
Okay. So many of you were outstanding. And, Ben Dandria, hitting that guy in the flat and knocking the ball out, and Chris Smith jumping on it, etc. And then fortunately, they used their 2 timeouts in the first series of the second half, and they couldn't stop the clock at the end, which was one factor. But the other factor was we didn't give the ball back to them in the last 3 minutes, and
mhm,
we actually got it down to about the 2.5 yard line, and we could have scored. But the prudent play was to take a knee. We already had the game won. We took a knee. We did show some class, but we also showed some intelligence. We weren't going to give them another chance, etc. So these were things that that made that whole event special, and I'm pretty sure you'll never forget it.
Was gonna ask, do you guys talk about this now that you're on the other side in that locker room?
Well, you know what? The Calgary win was tremendous also. I mean, we play Saskatchewan at the end, a team that we had lost to in the regular season, but somehow ended up first. It was UBC had beat them. It was not expected, so they had to come and play us. And the week before, it was a 47-46 victory with Manitoba going for two at the end to win. And we deflect the pass, so that puts us in the final. And then we end up beating a very good Saskatchewan team. I think it was 29-4. So we earned our way in there, and so those guys really, with the talent, they became a team. They made plays at critical times in the ball games that they had to, and then to go into Quebec, okay, in Laval Stadium, play Montreal, and beat them. It was an amazing thing. So, as I say, and then the McGill. I won't talk long about the McGill one because some of your UBC colleagues will be upset about that. But to have beaten them 47-11, and we only threw the ball 8 times, we ran over them with some great players and some great blocking. So it was just great. Championship teams are special. You know it. It's you know it's like regardless of how your career had gone up until that boy. When we went into that 27-26 game against Western, I just had a feeling every time we put you out there in a key situation, he's going to make it. He's going to make it, right? So, and then of course in the 43-39 game, it's been dubbed the greatest Yates Cup game of all time. I mean, how many big kicks did you make in that game?
Yeah,
And you know
yeah,
what? Something that doesn't get enough, respect is you made your field goals in the third quarter of the Vanier Cup game, but you hit two tremendous punts, to win the field that nobody even talks about. But these are things that when you go back, I mean, when the difference between winning and losing is a couple of inches here and
yeah.
there, it's these plays that make the difference. And yeah, I'm pleased that you were a part of it, and I'm pleased to have been a part of it.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, it's something, we think about and talk about all the time, even to this day, right? So those things will never go away. Okay, next question for you. Your favorite leader or coach, and maybe one that has inspired you.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Wally. I learned so much from him, and then because it was a very serendipitous thing, his career came to an end with the Alouettes, and he ended up coaching junior the year I started. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It was a coincidence, really, and I developed a relationship there that that basically lasted 40 years, still going on, and to have him to have a guy like that to be able to call and. What do you think of this? And, we're dealing with a situation here. Give me your 2 cents worth on that. It's been very invaluable. I also told you about a gentleman, Searle White, who, he, he instilled, first of all, very early in the campaign, he said, listen, I hope you stick around here. Because I love the way you talk to kids. You've got a winning philosophy. I got a feeling I could win some championships with you. To have somebody who's been around sort of just give you that little plug there at the right time. It makes you feel good and it gives you confidence and to go on. And Charlie Bailey gave me my first shot. He gave me a big shot at McGill, etc. And then, to come to Queens, my confidant was a gentleman by the name of Hal McCarney. He was the guy who was, he was my guy. And now listen, he he came of age in the late 40s and 50s. So not every one of his suggestions, okay, was I able to take full advantage of. But, he had some tremendous insights. And, the insights just caused me to sort of reflect on things. He was a problem solver. And maybe the solution that he was offering may not have been what we did, but to get us to think about it a different way was very, very interesting. I've had a lot of great guys. Tony Proudfoot was another one who was just a real thinking man's coach. He was brilliant, and I had the opportunity also to work with and against two brilliant offensive minds. Jacques Chapdelaine coached against him, And I can tell you that it was humbling, when I first started because, Jacques was so far ahead of the rest of us in terms of how to advance the football in the air. And then, what I was able to do was attract, Jerry McGrath from Concordia, who was another, brilliant football mind, great offensive innovator, a real thinker. And, when you get yourself listen, I learned a long time ago that if you're the smartest guy in the room, perhaps you're in the wrong room. So, when you surround yourself with people that, are really brilliant people. And the last one here, I want to save this guy for the last because I don't want to get too emotional about it. And that's that, the great Lions offensive line coach Dan Durazio had such a it was such a privilege to work along his side at so many BC Lion training camps, and just becoming a good friend of his and have him at my beck and call whenever I needed to talk about anything. I was sorry he passed on way too early, but boy, oh boy, he made a tremendous impact on me and my life. I couldn't think of a greater tribute to a coach than what Angus Reid, he published his book, Thank You, Coach, for teaching me how to live by teaching me how to play. It's a book that I think that any coach should read, and
Mm,
a lot of players should read it also. It's just a tremendous piece of work spoken from the heart. So the other guy was, Chuck McMahon was another great friend of mine who was a great, just such a great human being. And, not everybody coaching in football can be described as a great human being, but Chuck was a bright, sharp enough guy, competitive guy, but also, he was so balanced. I had great respect for the way he conducted himself, the way he talked to people, the way he explained things, etc. And of course, my good buddy Don Sweet, who was, he was a great help. Bob Vespasiani, another great one, and then of course the great Pat Tracy, my assistant at Queens, who was a feisty pit bull, who were very, very competitive, really wanted to win, was at his wit's end trying to stay composed sometimes because he was so he wanted to win so bad. And but extremely well prepared. He did a great job preparing each of you to play. And so, you surround yourself with some great people and some good things happen. So, anytime you get a chance to work with people that are better than you, I would urge any young coach to aspire to do that.
great
Sorry,
advice.
that was a long-winded answer, but
Well, I said to pick one, and I think you rattled off 10, but that's okay. We'll let it slide.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, you kind of mentioned earlier, does your answer change? The toughest coach to coach against? Jacques Chapdelaine.
Well, Jacques Chapdelaine was very tough because, talk about a guy who, that walked into what a lot of people felt was, an impossible situation, and he basically turned it into a national power, and they've never subsided. I would say on the defensive side of the ball, I thought that Greg Knox from McMaster was a very good coach. I thought that he was, he kept it fresh. I thought he got a lot of mileage out of his guys. We played against some tough teams there, McMaster. As a matter of fact, on our ascent to the top of the mountain, we had to overcome them. We had to beat them. That's sort of where it all started. They were the top dog in the league, and we beat them, and then we beat them 4 years in a row. And then I thought that, in my mind, when we were able to beat them, I thought, well, I think, on any given day, we could beat anybody. And certainly Greg Marshall was, he was great. He was tough guy to coach against. And that's where Glenn Constantine and Blake Dale, they're all great coaches. They're all great coaches. And, well, they made you better. You had to be good to beat them. Okay. And because they were great coaches.
Hmm. Okay. Favorite win? Do you want to skip that one? I'm assuming the 2009 Vanier.
Well, there's a couple of games there in 2009. I'll never forget my first win at Queens, 41-40, when I
Okay.
think we were 40-point underdogs. That was a big one. We had a tremendous win against, against Bishops when I was at Concordia. We went down there in 1993 and beat them at home 10-7. In that '09, boy, that run was, to say which game was the game to clinch first place, 27-26. We come back down the field with a minute and 15 seconds go, and Blaze Morrison, converts basically a 7-yard pass, avoids a tackle, and runs it in. That was an amazing deal there. Earlier, unfortunately, the drama against Guelph was because you were injured and your replacement had to go in and
Right through the pipes. He was great.
and kick a 37-yard field goal to win 52-49, a barn burner. And then, of course, the Yates Cup game to beat them. The game against Laval was unbelievable. The game against Calgary was unbelievable. These are golden memories. So many great games. I find myself going back to these moments and, assessing them. And, really what it was for all of us. And, I'll include myself. It was our finest hour, in a moment, once again, okay, let's go back to Wooden's. I've shown you that pyramid of success, right? His pyramid is, and at the top, he defines competitive excellence. Competitive excellence being your ability to be at your best when it's absolutely required. And that's what that '09 season, and, in any other time, okay, we've won the championship. It's the same thing as that when it was absolutely required, who stepped up? Well, we did. And that's a life lesson. That's a life lesson that you'll never forget.
Okay, let's flip the coin. Worst loss.
Oh, I've had a few. The loss to Ottawa in '08 after we had an undefeated season was a very, very tough loss. We had some circumstances to deal with. Our the league MVP, Mike Giffen, got injured in on the first play of our Week 8 game. The goal there was to get him a couple of carries just to get him tuned up, etc. And then he gets injured and couldn't play there. And then Danny Brannigan got a concussion that day. The quarterback, which I'm not sure that he was ever fully recovered from. So that was a tough one. Really was. We had a game down there at Waterloo too, where it was a night game. We traveled up the day and we ended up losing too. We ended up having some great wins there subsequent to that in 2006. We ended up beating Western at home, and then we beat McMaster in the playoffs as a tremendous underdog. But that was a tough loss. And then I had a couple at Concordia where we had a tough loss. There were a few tough losses there. So that's the one thing. I mean, just when you think that you're riding high and you're going to get humbled, it doesn't matter who you are. You pick a name. You pick a name of any of these great names that I've brought to the surface, and they can all tell you, "Oh yeah, we got humbled. We've been humbled." But you know what? It's this is the other lesson that was part of your development and your teammates, is that, failure is a great teacher. Failing to succeed on one occasion, okay, doesn't define you as an individual, and it doesn't define your career. However, failure causes you to reload, get back on the horse, and get going. And this is part of that stick-to-itiveness, that mental toughness that's required. This is all becoming a winner. This is how you become a successful person, is that you deal with your adversity and you battle back, and you stick with it. Eventually, you overcome it, and, people are talking about other games, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, best player that you have coached.
Yeah, boy.
Put you on the
Yeah,
spot,
when you
sir.
answer questions like that, you make one friend and there were 1,000 enemies, etc. I really have to say, the running back that I had at McGill, Michael Souls, was probably a player that he would have excelled at any position. He was an outstanding running back. He'd have been a great linebacker. I think he'd have been a great free safety or strong half. He could have played quarterback. He played rugby, so he could kick. I mean, I just thought that perhaps that he, with all of the things he could do, and many great ones, many great players, okay, who excelled at their position, but I think the one guy and also his understanding of the game and his oneness with the game, understanding when we needed a big play, where you needed an extra half yard, he understood that better than anybody else, I think, and so I would say that, and I've had lots of great ones. I want to make sure I'm on the record saying that, but he was probably the greatest player that I ever coached.
Okay. Okay, coach, any last words in the theme of giving back or sage advice for some of our listeners?
Well, you know, um, coaching is teaching, okay? So this profession of ours, and it is underdeveloped because a lot of guys like yourself, you're not getting paid to coach high school anymore. And, so it's really individuals giving up their time. Just understand the value and the great contribution you're making to society when you decide to, you take on the responsibility of being a coach. After one's father, it's quite likely that you become the most important male role model that young man will ever have. Okay, it's a tremendous responsibility, and it's one that I didn't take lightly. And I'm hoping that your generation and those that come after you will take the challenge. Okay, and do what's required to advance this next generation of young men, because football needs them, these young men need them, and there's great opportunities for development and personal fulfillment.
Well, on that note, I just want to say thank you for, having a huge impact on my life. I'll never forget you walking into my parents' house with you know, with the pamphlet of Queens. I don't think I even heard of Queens, and I was so new to football. That was partly the issue. But I just want to, I appreciate your time here today and all the conversations that we've had. Congratulations on your Hall of Fame, most recent Hall of Fame, and I hope we can connect again soon.
My pleasure, Daniel. You're going down as a Hall of Fame Queens guy, the all-time leading scorer. Okay, from humble beginnings, perhaps, but I'm extremely proud of the player that you were and the man you've become. So, good luck with this venture, and I hope that you have an opportunity to talk to some other interested parties and continue to do the good work that you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good one.